Every morning at 5:10 a.m., before the sun had fully decided to show up, Marcus Reed's alarm buzzed softly on the cracked nightstand beside his bed. He never let it ring twice. Years of routine had trained his body to wake up before the sound even finished. Marcus was 38 years old, a black single father living in a small rented apartment on the edge of Riverton, a quiet working-class town where people waved more than they talked. His apartment wasn't fancy, peeling paint near the kitchen window, a couch with one sagging cushion, but it was clean, warm, and filled with small signs of care. On the refrigerator door were crooked drawings held by magnets, stick figures with big smiles, a house with smoke curling from the chimney, and one that always made Marcus pause, a drawing of himself holding the hand of a little boy labeled "Me and Dad." That boy was Caleb, his 9-year-old son. Caleb slept in the next room, wrapped tightly in a blue blanket Marcus had found at a thrift store years ago. Marcus moved quietly each morning, careful not to wake him too early. He brewed cheap coffee, packed Caleb's lunch, always a sandwich, an apple, and a handwritten note, and then stood for a moment in the doorway of his son's room, watching him breathe. It was a habit Marcus never skipped. It reminded him why he kept going. Marcus worked as a city bus maintenance cleaner. It wasn't a job people bragged about, but it paid the bills. He cleaned seats, swept floors, wiped windows, and made sure the buses smelled decent before drivers took them out for the day. His shift started early and ended early, which meant he could walk Caleb to school every morning. That walk was the best part of his day. They talked about homework, about Caleb's dream of becoming an architect, about the old oak tree near the school that Caleb swore looked different every week. Marcus listened more than he talked. He believed listening was one of the strongest forms of love. Life hadn't always been this quiet. Years ago, Marcus had imagined a bigger future, 2 incomes, a house with a yard, laughter shared with a partner at the end of long days. But life had taken a different path. Caleb's mother had passed away suddenly when Caleb was 4. There was no warning, no long goodbye, just a phone call that left Marcus sitting on the kitchen floor, holding onto the counter as if it could keep the world from collapsing. Since then, Marcus had learned how to be both mother and father, how to cook meals he'd never cooked before, how to braid hair for school picture day, how to answer questions he didn't always have answers to. Despite everything, Marcus carried himself with quiet steadiness. He didn't complain much. At work, people knew him as the guy who showed up early, did his job, and helped others without being asked. In the neighborhood, he was the dad who fixed loose fences, shoveled snow for elderly neighbors, and never forgot to say hello. He believed small actions mattered. He believed kindness was something you practiced daily, like brushing your teeth. Most afternoons after picking Caleb up from school, Marcus stopped by the corner market to buy whatever was on sale. They walked home together, Caleb talking nonstop, Marcus nodding and smiling. Evenings were simple: homework at the kitchen table, dinner cooked on a single burner, then reading before bed. Marcus didn't have much time for himself, but he didn't feel empty. His life was full in quiet ways. On one particular Tuesday, everything seemed the same. The sky was overcast, the air cool but calm. Marcus finished his shift, changed into his worn jacket, and headed out on foot toward Caleb's school. He had no idea that by the end of that day, something would happen that would change the shape of his heart and the path of someone else's life forever. Marcus noticed her near the bus stop on Maple Street, the one he passed every afternoon. At first, he almost walked past her. She sat on the low concrete bench, shoulders slumped, one hand gripping the edge as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. She looked to be in her early 30s, with tired eyes and hair pulled back in a messy knot. A small canvas bag rested at her feet. The way she held herself, stiff, guarded, made Marcus slow his steps. When he was closer, he saw the brace around her left leg and the faint tremor in her hands. Her face was turned away, but her breathing looked shallow, uneven. Marcus hesitated. He wasn't the type to intrude, but something about her stillness felt wrong. He cleared his throat gently. "Excuse me," he said, keeping his voice calm. "Are you okay?" She turned sharply, startled, and for a second fear flashed across her face before settling into something harder. "I'm fine," she said quickly. Marcus nodded, already preparing to keep walking, but then she shifted, tried to stand, and winced sharply. Her hands slipped and she sank back down, breathing harder now. "I can't," she muttered under her breath, frustration thick in her voice. Marcus stopped. "Do you need help?" he asked. "I can call someone or—" She shook her head firmly. "No, please, just leave me." The words were sharp, but her eyes betrayed something else, embarrassment, maybe, or exhaustion. Marcus stayed still, giving her space. "All right," he said softly. "I'll be nearby if you change your mind." He took a few steps away, but something tugged at him. He looked back. She hadn't moved. Her jaw was clenched, eyes fixed on the ground as if staring at it long enough might make it give her answers. Marcus checked his watch. He still had time before picking up Caleb. He approached again, slower this time, and crouched a few feet away so he wasn't towering over her. I don't want to make you uncomfortable, he said, but you don't look fine, and it's okay not to be. She let out a shaky breath. I said leave me, she repeated, but this time her voice cracked. I can't walk not like this and I don't need pity. Marcus didn't flinch. I'm not offering pity, he replied, just help. Silence hung between them, traffic passed, people walked by, most too busy to notice. Finally, she spoke. My name's Lena, she said quietly, and I don't want anyone seeing me like this. Marcus nodded. I'm Marcus. Lena explained in short, clipped sentences. She injured her leg months ago in a workplace accident. The recovery had been slow. Physical therapy appointments were expensive. Today, her leg had given out unexpectedly and the pain was worse than usual. She was trying to get home, but the thought of standing again made her stomach twist. I hate this, she said, her voice low. I hate needing help, I hate being stuck. Marcus listened. He didn't interrupt. He remembered moments in his own life when asking for help felt like admitting defeat, when the world seemed to expect strength without ever offering rest. I understand, he said after a pause. But sometimes getting help doesn't make you weak, sometimes it just means you're human. She scoffed lightly, but there was no real anger behind it. Easy to say. Marcus smiled faintly, maybe but still true. Lena looked away. I can't walk, she repeated, so just leave me, please. Marcus knew he could walk away, no one would blame him. He had responsibilities, a schedule, a child waiting for him. But as he looked at Lena sitting there alone, pride and pain fighting in her eyes, something settled inside him. Leaving felt wrong. Marcus stood slowly and pulled out his phone. I need to pick up my son soon, he said honestly, but I'm not leaving you like this. Let's figure something out together. Lena frowned. I don't want to be your problem. You're not, Marcus replied. You're a person who needs help, there's a difference. He asked where she lived. It turned out she was only 6 blocks away in a small apartment complex near the library. Normally, she could manage the walk with breaks, but today wasn't normal. Marcus called Caleb's school and explained he'd be late. Then he called a neighbor he trusted, Mrs. Howard, and asked if she could pick Caleb up. She agreed without hesitation. Marcus hung up and turned back to Lena. Okay, he said, we've got time. Lena looked confused. Why would you do that? She asked quietly. You don't even know me. Marcus shrugged. I know what it's like to feel stuck. He offered options, calling a taxi, finding a wheelchair at a nearby clinic, even just sitting with her until the pain eased. Lena hesitated, pride wrestling with practicality. Eventually, she agreed to let him help her stand just enough to see if she could lean on him. Marcus moved carefully, explaining every step, making sure she felt in control. He positioned himself beside her, steady and patient. When she tried to stand, her leg buckled slightly and she grabbed his arm instinctively. I'm sorry, she said quickly. Don't be, Marcus replied, I've got you. They didn't make it far. After a few painful steps, Lena shook her head. I can't, she said, tears threatening but not falling. I really can't. Marcus didn't push, he helped her sit back down. All right, he said, then we don't force it. He scanned the street thinking, then he noticed the small community center across the road. It had ramps, benches, and usually someone at the front desk. We can go there, he suggested. They might have a wheelchair or at least a quiet place for you to rest. Lena hesitated, then nodded. Together, slowly, with frequent pauses, they made their way across the street. It wasn't easy. Marcus moved at her pace, never rushing, never sighing. When they finally reached the center, Lena looked exhausted but relieved. Inside, Marcus explained the situation to the staff. Within minutes, they had a wheelchair and a glass of water for Lena. She sank into the chair, shoulders relaxing for the first time. Thank you, she whispered. Marcus smiled. You're welcome. He stayed with her, listening as she talked more about her job as a bookstore assistant, about how the injury had changed everything, about how she hated being seen as fragile. Marcus didn't offer solutions unless she asked. He simply listened, nodding, understanding. After some rest, Lena felt ready to go home. Marcus wheeled her the rest of the way, chatting lightly to ease the tension. When they reached her building, she looked up at him. You didn't have to do all this, she said. I know, Marcus replied, but I wanted. As Marcus helped Lena inside her apartment, she insisted on making tea despite his protests. The apartment was small but neat, with books stacked everywhere and sunlight streaming through thin curtains. Lena sat at the table, watching Marcus pour hot water carefully. "You're different," she said suddenly. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "Most people would have walked away," she said, "or helped just enough to feel good about themselves. You stayed." Marcus thought for a moment. "When my wife passed," he said quietly, "there were days I couldn't get out of bed. People helped me then. I learned something from that." Lena listened, her expression softening. "I'm sorry," she said. "Thank you," Marcus replied, "but it taught me that help isn't something to be ashamed of, it's something to pass on." Something shifted in Lena then. The tightness in her shoulders eased, the defensiveness faded. She looked at Marcus not as a stranger anymore but as someone who understood. "You didn't see me as broken," she said. "No," Marcus said simply, "I saw you as someone having a hard day." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Lena sipped her tea. Outside, the sky began to clear. "You know," she said finally, "when I told you to leave, I didn't really want you to." Marcus smiled gently. "I figured." Over the next few weeks, Marcus and Lena crossed paths often. Sometimes it was a quick wave, sometimes it was a longer conversation. Marcus helped her set up a better routine for her therapy appointments. Lena, in return, tutored Caleb in reading and helped him with school projects. Slowly, life wove them together. Lena's leg improved with time and care. She walked more confidently. Marcus watched her grow stronger, not just physically but emotionally. She laughed more, she trusted more. One afternoon, months later, they sat on a park bench. Caleb played nearby, running freely. "I used to think asking for help meant giving up," Lena said. "Now I know it can mean starting over." Marcus nodded. "And I used to think I didn't have room in my life for anything extra," he replied. "Turns out making room is how life grows." They smiled at each other, not with grand promises but with quiet understanding. Life wasn't perfect, but it was fuller. The truth is, everyone reaches a moment when they want to say, "Leave me, I can't walk." Not because they truly want to be alone, but because they're tired of feeling weak, tired of explaining their pain, tired of hoping someone will stay. The lesson in Marcus and Lena's story isn't about heroism or dramatic sacrifice. It's about ordinary kindness. It's about choosing to pause when it would be easier to keep walking. It's about listening without judgment and helping without conditions. Strength isn't found in never needing help. It's found in accepting it and offering it without shame. Sometimes the most unexpected thing we can do is stay when someone asks us to leave, and sometimes that simple choice can change more than one life. End of story.